Well, a couple of days just passed in after my last video. I was doing in finals, nailing in theories, and sucking in maths and statistics and programming. And while I'm bored, and when I say bored, I mean all the freaking time, I spent 60 hours plus in Persona 5 in a difficulty that would make the internet cut my ballsack. And during those times, apparently Donald Trump posted a meme of him wrestling the living hell out of CNN. CNN investigated the guy who posted the CNN meme. They're blackmailing the guy, doxing the guy apologized. I left the world for barely a week and the world has gone freaking insane. I want to talk about sex robots for a minute. We all have questions like, how would sex robots impact human interactions in general? Will it discourage the desires for humanity to evolve and grow as a species? Will it make us to consider not breeding with another human being a viable option to live our daily lives? Will we consider the possibility that maybe being single isn't so bad after all? Is it a question that people ask more and more today now that sex robots exist? But you see, I have a different perspective. Let's ask the question, and what would one person do with a sex robot? Well, they would have sex to them. How is it any different to Dakimakuras? People would also have sex with Dakimakuras. What is going to be the usage difference between a Dakimakura and a sex robot? Hell, what is the usage difference between a Dakimakura and a dildo? What is the usage difference between a dildo and your hand? The thing is, how one would use sex robots and Dakimakuras and your hand are almost 90% the same, and Dakimakura has existed for like decades now. The only difference is that it's more technologically enhanced. It's just like video games. The high-tech video games are usually in the arcades back in the day, but now the high-tech stuff can be accessed through our living rooms or our desktop PCs, and yet the purpose is still the same, to play games. Technological advancements are there to make our activities more fun, even though the goal of said activities are basically the same. Same goes for fapping. Is the existence of Dakimakuras and other otaku goods destroy the foundation of society or something? No, Dakimakuras actually help the business and economy. Hell, porn is one of the most successful industries out there. You can make loads of profits from porn. But we're not talking about economy, we're talking human interaction and the ethical concerns of having sex robots. In that perspective, we're gonna get into a paper that has been published and has been in a lot of articles for quite a while, which is definitely something that interests me, not necessarily because I want to have sex with robots, but because I'm interested in other people's reaction to this phenomenon, especially with the discussion of ethical concerns. Our Sexual Future with Robots, a Foundation for Responsible Robotics Consultation Report. Is this really the nicest front cover to show? Anyway, let's read the introduction. In 2017, most liberal societies accept or tolerate sex in many different forms and varieties. Sex toys and masturbation aids have been used for centuries and can be easily purchased in stores in many countries. Now companies are developing robots for sexual gratification, but a robot designed for sex may have different impacts when compared with other sex aids. How so? Like I said, their functions are not so different with your own two hands. They're just technologically enhanced. Masturbation hasn't stopped human beings from breeding, and people have masturbated for decades. Those currently being developed are essentially pornographic representations of the human body, mostly female. Such representations combined with human anthropomorphism may lead me to perceive robots as a new ontological category that exists in a fantasy between the living and the inanimate. This is reinforced by robot manufacturers with an eye to the future. They understand the market importance of adding intimacy, companionship, and conversation to sexual gratification. So you're concerned about reducing people into their functions. That's weird. I've seen our arms being reduced into a stick before, and not a lot of people complain, or at least they don't complain about it in that perspective. Our human bodies have been reduced into their mere functions for a lot of objects and a lot of activities in quite the chunk of our lifetime, and there's no ethical concerns being put into any of them. No ethical concerns in how tripods reduced our legs into nothing but body parts used to support something, even though that's exactly what legs are for. And yes, some might deny this, but our reproductive systems can be used as an instrument for pleasure, the same way our legs can be used as an instrument for standing up. A lot of object parts are named after our bodies, like scissor arms or table legs, and no ethical discussions are being made into any of those. When people are playing soccer, they're reducing their entire body and mind into legs to kick the balls out. No ethical discussions there. Why does an ethical discussion need to happen by the time sexuality plays in? If human beings can replicate the pleasure that can be gained through the means of our reproductive organs, the same way human beings can replicate the functionality of legs as support for other objects, then why is it an issue now? Actually, we do have issues in how automation of certain workforces are reducing people's employment, but that is less of an ethical concern and more of an economic concern, how one are willing to sacrifice human workforces in favor of automated systems, etc. That brings up an entirely new discussion, but what about sex robots? If we're looking at it in the perspective of automation, then sex robots would theoretically be replacing prostitutes, the same way other robots replace human workforces in factory productions. This is getting too complicated. Let's read even further. The aim of this consultation report is to present an objective summary of the issues and various opinions about what could be our most intimate association with technological artifacts. We do not contemplate or speculate about far future robots with personhood that could have all manner of imagined properties. We focus instead on significant issues that we may have to deal with in the foreseeable future over the next 5 to 10 years. Good. We don't want to focus too much on speculations and the impacts of sex robots, although that can be researched even further by researching the impact of dakimakuras and 2D waifus. They're not so different, they're just a cheaper alternative. We begin by presenting an overview of the technological state-of-the-art in sex robots and parallel sex tech at the time of writing this document, May 2017. We then focus on 7 core questions that have received prominent attention in the media and in scholarly literature. Question 1. Would people have sex with a robot? Yes. If they can afford such luxurious item, yes. Question 2. What kind of relationship can we have with a robot? The same relationship that you would have with your dildo or with your hand or with your phone when you jerk off to porn in your phone. Not at all. They're just objects to ease your means of satisfaction. The only people who thinks about their objects intimately are individuals who are so detached out of this reality you might as well as not pay attention to them. I would honestly not concern myself over what individuals are marrying right now because it gets weirder and weirder as we get through this world. We might as well say, fine, not my business. Question 3. Will robot sex workers and bordellos be acceptable? Yeah, they would if the technologies of our current year are capable of making artificial intelligence that can learn and think for themselves, which, unfortunately, well, let's just say that it's not possible to create GLaDOS or HAL 9000. You can take that as a good news or bad news, depending on your perspective. Question 4. Will sex robots change societal perceptions of gender? No. Just because I jerk off to hentai porn doesn't mean that I see real-life women as objects. You know, I'm more concerned of the people who are saying that they have concerns that we cannot distinguish between real-life human beings and art. I sense a lot of projection in that regard, and that projection can be very dangerous. Question 5. Could sexual intimacy with robots lead to greater social isolation? That's possible, but then again, social outcasts and loners exist in every part of our lifetime in every decade. I would say that hikikomoris exist even before it was a term. They just have a different name for it. I heard Leonardo da Vinci isn't that great with the crowds, with him experimenting with things and all of that.
What? Me? Consorting? Preposterous.
People have hobbies, and sometimes those hobbies are more important to them than anything else in life. Again, this happens before video games was a thing. Instead of video games, it was books. Fictions can be contained within books too, and they can also be enjoyed through it as well. Books exist for God knows how long. Loners have a wide variety of hobbies that put them out of society's crosshairs, and those hobbies are not just limited to what we have in current year. But we're talking in the context of intimacy with sex robots. If the robots are capable of having an artificial intelligence with its own self-conscious personality, then it's definitely possible to cause some form of a social isolation, but the discussion now should be in how to program a self-conscious entity. How are we able to program AIs that can accurately represent human personality? Can this AI generate their own personalities through their interactions with human beings? How are they able to feel emotions? Since these AIs are man-made, can we manipulate their emotions into whatever we desire? Christ, the longer we get through this, the longer we get through the ethics of creating an AI in and of itself, which is definitely something more interesting to have a discussion with instead of jumping straight into sex robots. At this moment, the most realistic sex robots that we can produce are only going to have basic functionalities without any sort of self-conscious artificial intelligence. It's only going to be just like factory robots in a lot of ways. Question 6. Could robots help with sexual healing and therapy? Well, just ask how masturbation helps with sexual healing and therapy because, again, sex robots are just an aid for fapping. A technologically enhanced aid for fapping, but it's still an aid for fapping. It's just like video games. We used to play tabletop RPGs, but now we play tabletop RPGs. Except we can control the characters, create their looks, interact with the world, the RPG mechanics are a lot more enhanced, and something different is on the table. It's still about playing an RPG. It all ends up with the same purpose, with the only difference being it's technologically superior than what we had before, albeit more expensive, certainly. Question 7. Would sex robots help to reduce sex crimes? That's debatable. Here's the thing about sex crimes, especially concerning sex crimes in a certain troublesome region. If the people who are committing these sex crimes think that having sex with robots or even fapping are immoral, and that they are very loyal to their beliefs, then sex robots would do no good. The problem is with the ideology that convinces them of how fapping and sex robots are evil, even though in practice they're really not. They're functionally just masturbating aids, and unfortunately there are still people who think that masturbating is evil and raping people is okay. Anyway, we're about 3 pages in. No, I'm not kidding, 3 pages in, and we're still faced with a lot of questions. So, to make this quick, I'm just gonna sum up what the paper found.
This goes all the way back to ancient Greece with the myth of the artist Pygmalion, who fell in love with a statue that he carved out of ivory. He had a special bed made so that he could sleep with it. So enamored was he that the goddess Aphrodite turned it into a real woman. According to Richardson, this is a story about a non-reciprocal relationship that underscores the promotion and development of sex robots.
Wow, so apparently weaves want their waifus to be real or a thing in ancient Greece. Need to note that for further reference.
Modern sex dolls, unlike their finial blown-up counterparts, have a silicone skin with a human-like feel and touch. They often include an articulated metal skeleton so that they can be maneuvered into a variety of positions.
And by the way, that typo was actually in the paper. Use automated spell checks for God's sake. Anyway, to sum up a couple of pages here, the writers conducted interviews with some sex robot manufacturers. The robots themselves are fully customizable, ranging from face, eye color, and pubic hair? Heat sensors respond to touch, and their responses are dependent on their personality. Unfortunately, none of them so far can walk. The personality of robots can be modified into users' content, and Abyss Creations went even further for developing an assistance AI other than sex.
Another parallel development related to sex robotics is the host of teledildonics, devices either currently on the market or about to enter it soon. Some of these involve Bluetooth technology, often referred to as blue dildonics, that allow users to wirelessly sync and remotely control each other's devices. The products generally include a male and female device. The male device is a remote-controlled vibrating dildo, while the female device is a contracting sleeve.
So, basically, technologically enhanced dildos and holes. Huh.
A 2016 class action in Illinois against the company Standard Innovation Corp claimed that data collected and transmitted, including the date and time of each use of the vibrator and the settings used. The allegation was that this data is sent together with the personal email address of the user who registered with the WeConnect app. Standard Innovation has now been ordered to pay $4 million Canadian to affected users. Moreover, a number of security flaws were revealed at the DEF CON Hacker Conference in Las Vegas in 2016. The app controlling the vibrator allowed anyone within Bluetooth range to seize control of the device.
Ouch! That's horrendous. In fact, that sounds like a hentai scenario. But honestly, the concern of how our data and certain functionalities of sex robots can be hacked are more or less concerns about security instead of ethics. Anyway, let's get back to the questions. I give my answers, but the paper also gives theirs, including some studies and surveys. Question 1. Would people have sex with a robot?
A number of polls have shown that there is a potential market for robots that provide sexual services. Hughes and Arnold conducted a survey with 100 U.S. participants ranging in age between 20 to 61, with 43% females and 57% males. They found out that 2/3 of males were in favor of using sex robots, while almost 2/3 of females were against, but 86% of all respondents thought that robots would satisfy sexual desire. The Nesta Future Fest survey of 1,002 UK adults found that 70% of respondents would be prepared to go on a date with a robot, and that number increased to 26% for a robot that looked exactly like a human. A Huffington Post poll of 1,000 US adults found that 9% would have sex with robots if they were available. The Graph and Allo polled 1,162 adult participants and found that 20.2% of participants thought that sex robots had no negative consequences, while 13.3% thought that they would change our norms and values.
So, there you go. Human beings are degenerates. At least some of them. Oh, and this section covers up in how not only the men but the women are degenerates as well. It also covers up a certain ideology that will restrict people on having sex with robots because, only heretics would do such a thing. But I do have to warn here, the numbers in all of the surveys are not only varying, but all the surveys come in different questions and therefore different results, especially with people having different perceptions to what they think of sex robots. Sex robots as of now are still on that uncanny valley territory, so I would say that their imaginations are definitely running wild, but I doubt that they would do such a thing in practice, especially with the current state of sex robots. Now let's get to question 2. What kind of relationship could we have with a sex robot? This is mostly answered by discussing about the phenomenons of the uncanny valley, which, if you don't know what that is, it's that really strange feeling of how when one thing looks too real, it becomes so surreal and strange. It's like those ultra-realistic video games that try so desperately to be real, but they end up looking really creepy. Hell, forget looks, it's still pretty damn difficult to replicate a natural sounding conversation with a robot even to this day. So I don't expect the manufacturers to be able to create robots that can escape the uncanny valley, both in looks and in voice. Robots can also not comprehend the context of human conversations or words. They can't even accurately represent what you're saying at this moment. Turn on automated closed captions and see whether or not the things I say can make you comment of how funny it is. So to develop a robot that is closer to a human being, we still have a very long way to go. The question isn't really what kind of relationships could we have with sex robots. The question is, what kind of relationship could we have with robots in general? And like I said before, since robots at this very moment are mere functional objects that are used to satisfy us evil humans, the answer is none at all, even if those objects closely resemble a human being. Also, they asked this really stupid question.
When asked the question, would having sex with a robot cause you to lose your virginity? Only 30% said yes, while 70% said no, and there was no differences between males and females.
Fapping would result in the loss of your virginity. Whoever is putting these surveys are out of their damn mind. Someone actually asked this with a straight face. Oh, but that's not the best part.
Nonetheless, 42% of the participants in the Huffington Post poll thought that being intimate with a robot constituted cheating, while 31% thought that it wasn't, and 26% were unsure. Hughes and Arnold's participants rated robots as a substitute for cheating as an appropriate use of robots as 4.97 out of 7 on a scale with 1 being the lowest. This was significantly higher for men than for women.
You know, when I say that I was reading academic journals and papers in college, I don't mind reading this sort of thing. However, reading the paper further, it does give me a couple of interesting points to think about. First off, in the process of creating a sex robot with multiple configurable personalities, I want to ask, what is the benefit of having a sex robot if these sex robots have their own personality that are self-learning and self-conscious? Wouldn't that be the same as having a relationship with another human being, except less challenging and a lot less authentic? Why should we develop a sex robot that can feel emotions and have personalities when in the end they're no different to a human being? Wow, for some reason reading through this paper made me realize of how actual relationships sound a lot cooler in comparison. Considering the uncanny valley nature of sex robots and the programming faults it can have with it and how freaking expensive it is, maybe having a relationship wasn't so bad after all. I should ask if any of my female subscribers are free. And by the way, stop pairing me with Aydin. I appreciate the fan arts, including this one by Florence Lupin, but me and Aydin is the equivalent of Akira and Kawakami. Wait a second, that doesn't sound discouraging. Moving on to question 3, will sex robots and bordellos be acceptable? Short answer, yes, in the foreseeable future. Now to question 4, will sex robots change societal perceptions of gender? Enter the feminist.
Gushu argues that sex robots by their very design encourage the idea that women are subordinate to men and mere instruments for the fulfillment of male fantasies. This type of harm has been explored in the context of pornography and is reproduced in the harm caused by sex robots. Like pornography, use of sex robots sexualizes rape, violence, sexual harassment, and prostitution, and eroticizes dominance and submission.
Need I remind you all viewers that quite a significant number of women who watches porn tend to look at ultraviolet porn.
This argument is echoed by Kathleen Richardson, who is campaigning against the use of sex robots. She's also concerned that the representation of sex robots is based on pornographic images of women. Richardson argues extensively that favoring the development of sex robots reveals a coercive attitude towards women's bodies. Richardson argues that these robots reinforce a view of the female body as a commodity. Added to this, Sullins argues that sex robots contribute to a negative body image.
And these people have no issue when human beings or any of their organs are reduced into their mere functions. You know, like tripods, crutches, soccer, that Bluetooth dildo thing.
In contrast, Barber argues that this can also be seen as a contemporary example of deviation as a key to innovation and as a blatant opportunity to explore sexuality and the human condition in even more depth and reveal more about our need to be creative, innovative, and inventive as part of our human evolutionary sexual strategy as a whole.
Glad that at least they interview some sane people.
Richardson proposes that male engineers in robotics are transferring their heteronormative and sexualized versions of women onto the objects they produced. She points out that while male-looking robots do interesting tasks, female gender robots perform services for males like an assistant or will be used sexually. This is another way for males to fantasize about how they can control women. If you already view women as objects, it is not such a stretch of the imagination to then perpetuate this.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Just because we're applying feminine characteristics to our creations doesn't mean that we look at real-life women as objects. You have a problem with interpreting the simple fact that people can distinguish between what is fiction, what is reality, what is an object, and what is a person.
It is certainly an unfortunate fact that males dominate the engineering industries. In the UK, women take only 9% of engineering jobs, and these numbers are reflected elsewhere in the world, and with very low numbers in computer science and artificial intelligence.
This paper is incredibly biased on its presentation. Certainly unfortunate. Why is it certainly unfortunate? Why? Are you saying that it's sexist that women don't apply more into engineering jobs? Are you saying that it's sexism that prevents women from becoming engineers? What? Are you sure that you want women to be in engineering jobs? Are you sure that you want women to be in computer science and artificial intelligence? Do you know how demanding those tasks are?
There's little doubt that this has a gendered impact on the technologies that we use.
No. There's little doubt? No. There is a lot of doubt in your assertion that the products of men-dominated fields have a gendered impact. Do you know why the assistants or receptionist robots are women? Because women are a lot more gentle and caring. You're basically interpreting malicious motives in men developing AIs and robots that have feminine qualities. There are many other reasons why these engineers choose feminine traits over masculine traits for their products. And those reasons go beyond, oh, the fields are just dominated by men, and men are sexist pigs that objectify women in all of their products. I think I can figure out why people throw sexist or racist labels. It's either because their brains are too hard on comprehending what the answers are, or they just outright deny the real answers by calling them racist, sexist, and such.
However, having more women in industry will not necessarily mean a change in the pornographic representation of women in the sex robots. The choice of representations will still largely be determined by the demands of the market.
So, wait. You first said that there's little doubt that the excessive number of men give gendered impact to the technologies we use, but now you say having more women in the industry will not necessarily mean a change because of demands in the market. So are the products and technologies that people make are caused by the domination of men in the fields, or because of the demands of the market? You're sitting on the fence so much the fence pierced through your ass. Choose a freaking position.
Moreover, computer scientist Kate Devlin, while agreeing with Richardson that society has enough problems with gender stereotypes, entrenched sexism, and sexual objectification, also says opposition to developing sexual robots that aims for an outright ban. That seems short-sighted. Devlin goes on to say that the internet has already opened up a world where people can explore their sexual identity and politics and build communities of those who share their views. Aided by technology, society is rethinking sex-gender dualism. Why should a sex robot be binary?
Then explain to me, computer scientist, how are you able to develop a non-binary sex robot? Are you talking about futanari robots? Because that...
These are complex issues with the impact of sex robots on perceptions of gender and gender stereotypes. There is no question that creating a pornographic representation of women's bodies in a moving sex machine objectifies and commodifies women's bodies.
No question. Huh. Alright then.
However, the big question is, what additional impact on societal perception this will create within an already burgeoning adult industry that thrives on such objectification and commodification? But it may be an amplifier. We just don't know.
As in, how objectification proves sexism? You're well aware that we're talking about sex robots here, right? Actual objects? Not human beings?
In balancing the arguments, we heard from a sex journalist involved in BDSM that she feels most erotically empowered when she consents to objectification. But this is objectification during an individual sex act with a consenting adult. This is different from women being objectified in the street or in the workplace without giving their consent. We have no public survey data on this question, and it is certainly an area worth broader societal discussion that should include underrepresented communities.
Robots are not women. Robots are not women. Why are you projecting yourself? Question 5. Could intimacy with robots lead to greater societal isolation?
Sullen states that these machines will not help their users form strong friendships that are essential to an ethical society and may indeed lead to more isolation.
No shit, Sherlock. What kind of cave have you been living in?
The reason for isolation, Richardson argues that intimate relations with robots will lead to more isolation for the human race because robots are not able to meet the species-specific sociality of human beings. Only other humans can do that.
So, robots would make people antisocial because robots can't socialize like humans? Thanks, Captain. Like, I wouldn't know about that if you didn't tell me.
The scholars cited here are pretty much in agreement that sex with robots could or will lead to social isolation. The reasons given varied. Spending time in a robot relationship could create an inability to form human friendships. Robots don't meet the species-specific needs of humans. Sex robots could desensitize humans to intimacy and empathy, which can only be developed through experiencing human interaction and mutual consenting relationships. Real sexual relationships could become overwhelming because relations with robots are easier. The 1,162 Dutch participants of the De Graaf and Alou study were not so sure, and the survey produced mixed responses to the question of social deprivation and isolation.
I don't know. Do you really need scholars to explain all of these for us? Question 5 sounds rather pointless. Question 6. Could robots help with sexual healing and therapy, which can be answered in asking whether or not masturbating is healthy? And question 7 is quite interesting. Can sex robots reduce sex crimes? The paper focuses particularly on pedophilia. Unfortunately, as one of the researchers said, it is rather difficult to gather up pedophiles for a research involving child sex robots.
MIT researcher Kate Darling said, "We have no idea what direction this goes in and we can't research it. Funding is scarce and it isn't easy to find a group of pedophiles willing to participate in research. Such a line of inquiry would also be likely to provoke objections from many corners."
Overall, people are still not sure, and honestly, I'm not sure what to think about it either. I can't form an opinion on this without any sorts of concrete data. A lot of the arguments are possible theoretically, but we don't have lots of data on this, so I'll probably just gonna let it slide for this moment. So the journal goes on to answer the rest of the questions with the robotic developers. I'm not really interested in that. Let's just get to the conclusion. What do we learn today? Well, the most definite thing that we learned today is sex robots are going to be a thing in the future, and people are opting for more and more means of high-tech fapping. Before we end this video, huge thanks to my new patrons, Taffery and MVG, for the pledges on Patreon. You guys are fantastic. That's all for the video today. If you like this, you can go ahead, click the like button, and subscribe for more. If you wish, you can support me on Patreon. Thanks for watching.